Hi. Hi. No, no tienes que request estar en el live video. Simplemente quédate ahí, solo mira ya. Si quieres hacer preguntas, las pones en el comment. Gracias, ya me mandaste un corazoncito. Hasta ahora solo somos tú y yo. Socorro. ¿Todo bien? Hi, happy Friday, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. I see some names that I recognize, so I'm very grateful. This is my first live ever, so I'm super excited to be doing this. I'm gonna just let people come into the live, and then we'll have our experts joining at noon, so in 2 minutes. So, but I wanted to start giving you a little bit of background on why we decided to, in this sunny Friday here in California, our topic today, and why we thought that the most important thing to start our Q&A was sleep and sleep disruption. Is something that affects 80% of women starting perimenopause, which is between early to mid 40s. And for over half of us, sleep disruption becomes a huge issue. So we are really wanted to understand a little bit more about sleep and how it affects not only things that seem logical, like low energy or moodiness or brain fogginess even, but also we started discovering, and we hope you all check our different articles in menosplain.com, and where we learn how sleep disruption can impact as well weight gain, and as it become a chronic issue, it can impact long-term diseases, both physically and mentally. So we couldn't think about a better topic for us to cover in our first Q&A, and I'm gonna ask our expert today to join us. So bear with me. This is our first Q&A. I'm getting used to this process, so thank you for bearing with us. So we are waiting for, and I want to introduce you to the expert that we have today. We're very excited to, in this sunny Friday, to have one of the 10 most influential people in sleep. And we love having someone that is not only a clinical psychologist and a diplomat of the American Board of Sleep Medicine. So I'm seeing people start joining in, so I'm gonna leave a little bit of time to do this. But as sorry, as I was hoping that sorry, I'm trying to have him come in. So as I was telling, over 80% that start perimenopause, which is around mid-40s, claim sleep disruption is one of the major issues. And here he is. So I was about to introduce you. So just giving a little bit of background of why, we chose sleep disruption as our first Q&A for Menosplain. And Menosplain is a community for female to empower women to really understand this transition and make sure that we can take action and change the lifestyle that we need to change. So we were, of course, the first thing that we wanted to do in this first Q&A is a touch on sleep disruption. So over 80% of women in perimenopause experience, and over 50% of us, sleep disruption is a major challenge. So we couldn't be more excited to have one of the 10 most influential people in sleep with us today. So I want to introduce you all to Dr. Michael Breus. He is a clinical psychologist and a diplomat of the American Board of Sleep Medicine and a fellow of the American Academy of Sleep Medicine. He's written numerous books on sleep, like The Power of When, The Sleep Doctor's Diet Plan, and he is a constant interviewee in shows like Kelly and Mike, CNN, Anderson Cooper. So we couldn't be more excited and more proud to have him today answer some of the questions that women had sent us around sleep disruption. So thank you so much, Dr. Breus, to be here with us.
Of course.
Excited. So I'm going to start with some of the questions that we already got from our community.
Okay, great.
And but feel all of you joining in, feel free to write your questions in the comments, and I will ask Dr. Breus as they come along. Let's start with one of the questions from our friend, Chris. She has heard for a long time that as you age, you need less hours of sleep per night. So how many hours of sleep a woman between the ages of 45 and 50 should have per night?
So first of all, ages 45 to 50 would not be where we would see a slowdown in the amount of sleep that somebody might require. Now remember, everybody's sleep need is individual, right? So as an example, I go to bed around midnight. I wake up about 6:15 every day. I get about 6 hours and 15 minutes of sleep. And I'm the sleep doctor, by the way, right? My wife, on the other hand, goes to bed closer to 11 and wakes up closer to 7:30. So she may get 8.5 hours. If she got my 6 hours and 15 minutes, she would be sleep deprived. But if I get it, obviously I'm not. So the first thing we all have to understand is there's a personal level or amount of sleep. That's number one. Generally speaking, in that age group of 40 to 55, we usually see that somewhere between 7 and 9 hours of sleep seems to be kind of makes the most sense kind of in there. But I'll be honest with you, for the women who are going through menopause during that time, it's not about the hours of sleep. It's about the number of interruptions usually, right? And so it's not like women aren't there in bed, trying to get rest. It's more along the lines of, I fall asleep, I get hot, I wake up, I got to change my clothes, I get back in. Okay, I woke up 30 minutes later, I'm not hot anymore, but I don't know why I'm awake. I'm going to sit here, I'm going to try to de-stress. Like all of these things start to happen and continue to happen throughout menopause. So the truth of the matter is we only start to see a slowdown in the amount of sleep when we get older, kind of past age 50, 55. So we're really looking more post menopausal when we start to see some of those slowdowns. Right now, you should still be getting decent amount of sleep. It's just unfortunate that for many people, the quality is kind of crappy.
Yes, and in fact, we just got a question. So 5 hours. So is the quality then about 5 solid hours and without interruption, or how would you measure that quality?
So sure. So that's a great question. So number one, there's a lot of different tools that we have to measure sleep quality. I use the Aura Ring to measure my sleep. Some people have a strap, like a Fitbit strap. Some people can wear something on their chest. Some people have something in their bed. There's a whole host of different trackers out there. So that's one way to track the sleep that you're getting. But to be clear, I don't usually, if somebody's having a sleep problem or disrupted sleep, getting a sleep tracker just makes it worse usually, because then you see exactly how disrupted your sleep is and then you can't think about anything else. So what I'm oftentimes telling people to do is, before you go out and do that, just see, how do you feel when you wake up in the morning? When you wake up in the morning, do you want to hit the snooze button or do you want to get out of bed? When you get out of bed, are you dragging and it's really hard to lift each foot? Or do you get out of bed and maybe after 30 seconds, you're kind of wandering around and being okay? You are the best assessment tool for the quality of sleep that you're getting, because as soon as you wake up, within 30, 60 seconds or so, maybe have a little water, you will know very clearly, did I have a good night last night or did I not have a good night last night? But if you really do want to track, and a lot of people like numbers and metrics, I personally recommend the Aura Ring because that's what I use for actually all my patients.
Nice. And one of the things that we saw in your resources in your website is
Huh?
this idea of the circadian types.
Right.
Can you speak a little bit about that
Sure.
and how we attune to that?
Absolutely. So it turns out that there are these things called chronotypes. Now, many people have not heard of that term before, but you may have heard of the concept. So if anybody's ever called you an early bird or a night owl, those are chronotypes. So my contribution to the literature is, we used to think that there were only three chronotypes. I actually found a fourth chronotype, an insomnia chronotype. And so what happens is your entire circadian rhythm has a tendency to shift. So as an example, many of us, when we were infants, were early birds, right? We went to bed at 4:30 in the afternoon and we were up at 5 o'clock in the morning, and our parents were not very happy about it, right? So that made us an early bird, right? Then when we turned into toddlers and grammar school kids, we were kind of in the middle, right? What we would call a hummingbird, right? Somebody kind of in the middle. Now, by the way, I've renamed all of these, so I'll give you better names, okay?
Okay.
Then we get to adolescence, right? Teenagers. Teenagers are tough because they like to stay up late and sleep late because of that. There's an internal circadian shift. So they become night owls. Then when we hit our kind of adulthood, we actually end up at one chronotype. Once we're there, we stay there for about 20, 25 years or so, and then it changes again. So we actually go through all of these different stages. Early birds, I like to call them lions because they are the king of the morning, and they wake up early with lots of vigor and energy. And these people usually wake up like 4:30, 5 o'clock, so it's kind of cuckoo if you ask me. Um, then the middle people are what we call bears. Bears make up over 50% of the population, and bears are the best. I wish I was a bear, to be honest with you, because everything is on a bear's schedule. That 9 to 5 work schedule is perfect for a bear. Waking up around, 7 o'clock, going to bed around 10:30, 11 o'clock. That's what bears do, and they do it really, really well. The night owls, I actually call them wolves because they are late night creatures for sure. It's very similar to a wolf would be. And then we call the insomniacs dolphins. And so I chose dolphins because dolphins sleep unihemispherically. So half of their brain is asleep while the other half is awake and looking for predators. That's kind of like women who are going through menopause. That's kind of like people who got insomnia. Like, that whole category seems to be one that a lot of women in particular fall into that category. And if you were that category before menopause, you are certainly going to be like super that category after menopause. And so knowing and understanding where your body wants to go to sleep and wants to wake up usually is one of the most effective ways to be able to get higher quality sleep, especially during times like menopause, postmenopause, and things like that.
That's super helpful. Yes, no, and definitely I feel like I'm between a bear and a dolphin, and that
Yep.
um, one of the major things that we heard from a lot of our women friends is that we tend to wake up at 3 in the morning. Any, like
Yep.
to your point, maybe you're a little bit hot, or maybe
Hmm.
you just heard a noise and you wake up at 3 a.m. and then it's so hard to go back to sleep. So, what do you recommend? What is a good technique so that you can like
Hmm.
go back and fall asleep even if you wake up?
So this is good whether you got menopause or you don't got menopause, okay? So number one, if you don't actually have to go to the bathroom when you wake up, don't go. Now, you're probably wondering, okay, hold on a second, Michael, why on earth would you say something like that? Many people don't know, but one of the most important metrics for returning to sleep is you need a heart rate of 60 or below. Okay, so your heart rate has to be fairly low. When you go from lying down to sitting to standing and then you walk yourself to the bathroom, guess what? Your heart rate is now jacked up to 80, 85, something like that. If you really have to pee, obviously go pee.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but if you're just waking up saying, well, I'm up, I might as well see if I need to, that's not necessarily the best idea. Better to just relax in the spot that you're in. Now, the second thing that a lot of people like to do when they wake up in the middle of the night is look at the clock. This is arguably the worst idea that you could possibly have. However, I've never been able to stop anybody from looking at the clock in the middle of the night. It seems to be this compulsion that people just do, right? And then they instantly do the mental math and they say, "Oh crap, it's 3:30 in the morning. I've got to get up at 6. I've only got 2.5 hours left. Sleep, sleep, sleep." And you try really hard to sleep. Here's the thing about sleep. Sleep is a lot like love, right? The less you look for it, the more it shows up. So when you're trying to sleep, what that's doing is causing elevated heart rate and what we call autonomic arousal. This makes it very difficult to actually fall asleep. Better that you relax and allow the natural sleep process to take over. Now, let's be honest. That's really easy for me to say, but at 3 o'clock in the morning, it's not so easy to do, right? So I'm going to give you a couple of other tools that you can use in the middle of the night. One thing that you don't know, other than that 60 heart rate rule, is that if you're lying in bed, just relaxing, but still awake, an hour of that is worth about 15 or 20 minutes of sleep from a rejuvenation standpoint. So you are actually getting something good to your body by just relaxing and lying there. Even if you're lying there for a while, it's still going to have a good effect on your body. So that's number one. Number two, when you look at the clock, I want you to flip the script. Instead of saying, "Oh crap, I now have to only have 2.5 hours and I better get to sleep," here's what you say to yourself. This is awesome. I know that if I had to get up right this second or if I can't fall back asleep, it's not going to be the best, but it's certainly not going to be the worst. But I actually have an opportunity now with 2.5 hours, maybe I'll be able to fall back asleep. I remember Dr. Breus told me that if I lie here and relax, it's still going to be recuperative for my body. So I'm just going to chill out here and relax for a little while. So once you can get that attitude, then you can use a couple of different techniques. I have 3 different ones for everybody out there. The first one is called 4-7-8 breathing. This is a very simple technique where you breathe in for a count of 4, you hold it for a count of 7, and you breathe out for a count of 8.
Mm.
What this does, so this was a technique that was actually developed by the Navy SEALs to help lower heart rate. So in military situations, and there are some cases where you have to have your heart rate down very, very low in order not to affect what it is that you're doing. So this is a technique that they use, but we can use it at night to help us lower our heart rate below 60 and get ourselves able to go back asleep. Very simple 4-7-8 breathing. There's another technique that I like to talk about with people also. This is more of a distraction technique. It's kind of a new form of counting sheep. All right. So what you do is you count backwards from 300 by threes.
Mm.
Try it for a second.
Oh God.
Right. 300, 297,
297,
294, 291,
291.
288, right? It's mathematically so complicated, you can't think of anything else, and it's so doggone boring. you're out like a light. It works like a charm, all right? Another one is called cognitive shuffling. What's interesting about this is you start out with a word. Let's say that your word is apple,
Mm-hmm.
right? Start out with apple, and the last letter of that word, apple is E, then the next word has to start with E. And then you just play this mind game. But it's very straightforward. It's very simple. And what ends up happening is you start relaxing and you are not thinking about the thing that's stressing you out, like the fact that you're not falling asleep, or you got a lot of work to do, or there's laundry piling up, or whatever your thing is that's stressing you out in the middle of the night. This keeps your brain away from that. And hopefully you have the opportunity to fall back asleep. From a supplement standpoint, there are also some supplements that you could take. Unfortunately, most supplement preparations are not designed to be taken in the middle of the night. As an example, you would never want to take melatonin at 2 o'clock in the morning. That would be a disaster, right? To let everybody know, I developed my own sleep supplement that's specific for the middle of the night. It's called Sleep Doctor PM. So if you want to check it out, that's the website, Sleep Doctor PM, and that's specifically just for middle of the night. Now, let's say that you didn't want to have a formula for middle of the night, but you wanted to have some good quality sleep. One of the things that we know a lot of women are dealing with when going through menopause is a magnesium deficiency. Okay? Now, many women don't even realize that they have a magnesium deficiency. By the way, lots of people also have vitamin D deficiencies, which also has a big effect on sleep. So one of my favorite recipes is called banana tea. So most people don't know it, but bananas are loaded with magnesium. We call them nature's sleeping pills. But it turns out that there's 3 times the amount of magnesium in the peel than actually in the fruit itself. So here's a quick and easy recipe. Take a banana, wash it off on the outside, okay? Cut off the tip and cut off the stem. Now you've just got a banana with the peel still on it. Cut it in half. Remember, peel on and fruit in. Take the 2 halves and drop them into some boiling water, about 4 cups, and boil it till it turns brown, which is about 4 minutes. So all we've done so far is washed off a banana, cut off the top and the bottom, and dropped it into a pot of boiling water for 5 minutes. Then you drink the water. It's loaded with magnesium. As my daughter likes to say, Dad, it's very banana-y. So it's very flavorful from a banana perspective. So you really got to like bananas. But here's what I can tell you is it helps with constipation issues. It loads you up with magnesium, and people love it to sleep. I have one woman, and she makes it at the beginning of the week, and she pours it into popsicle molds, and she gives it to her kids as dessert, and it knocks them right out. It's perfect.
Wow, that's a good tip for,
Yep.
that's awesome.
Now, walking down this path a little bit on supplements, because I know we did have a question on supplements. Would it be okay if I talk a little bit about
Yes,
that?
please do, please do.
So vitamin D, I can't say enough important things about vitamin D for sleep, but also, to be fair, for COVID as well. There's now data to suggest that over 90% of the COVID deaths were in people who were vitamin D deficient.
Wow.
Okay, most people are vitamin D deficient. So taking an additional 800 international units of vitamin D daily will absolutely help you. What's interesting is vitamin D is also a circadian pacemaker. So it helps keep our circadian rhythms in line. So the lion and the bear and the wolf and the dolphin, if you don't have a good level of vitamin D, your schedule can move a little bit all over the place, and it's really not very helpful. So vitamin D is a really good one. I have a tendency to take vitamin D in the morning time, but because it is fat soluble, you want to take it with food, so that way it digests and kind of absorbs well into your system. The other big supplement that I'm always talking about with women for sleep is iron, because so many women are anemic due to a whole host of different issues. And we know that anemia causes very similar symptoms to something called restless leg syndrome. So restless leg syndrome is this kind of creepy crawly feeling that you get across your legs only when you lie down or only when you sit still. It's very annoying and bothersome. And in about 30 to 40% of the cases, we fix it just with iron supplementation. So those are the 3 big supplements that I do across the board for everybody, but specifically for women who are going through menopausal times, that can absolutely have an effect. Now, I do want to mention really quickly melatonin, because that's something that I know a lot of people talk about and want to
Yeah.
know more about, right? So let's kind of double tap on that and dig in a little bit deeper. So one thing to remember, everyone, is melatonin is a hormone, okay? It's not a supplement, it's not a vitamin, it's not a mineral, it's a hormone. So when we ingest melatonin, it has a hormonal effect, which means it has a very broad-based effect. Melatonin changes your body clock. It does not make you sleepy. Okay, so you may have been in a situation where you got in bed at one point in time where your body was ready to go to sleep, but your brain wasn't, right? That's where you see a desynchronization of the body clock. So you really want to try, if you can, again, falling asleep on your chronotype. But melatonin will actually shift that body clock for you. Melatonin is great for jet lag. Melatonin is great for shift workers. Generally speaking, melatonin is not a bad thing to be taking, especially as we get older. One of the things we now know is that when people reach age 50 to 55, we actually start to see a decrease in melatonin production. Now, to be honest with you, there's not a lot of good melatonin out there. There was a study that was done about a year ago where they pulled 15 different bottles off the shelf. Almost none of them had what they said they had in them.
Oh, wow.
So it's not good. So I actually started working with a company, and they make a really cool melatonin, all organic, called herbatonin. We can put the links down later for people if they're interested, but it's
Great.
exactly as it's spelled, herbatonin. I recommend this at one because it also has the right dosage. Unfortunately, 95% of the melatonin dosage right now is in an overdosage format,
Oh, wow.
which means, right, so people should be taking somewhere between 0.5 and 1.5 milligrams. I've seen them in 3, 5, 10 milligrams. Here's the way you know you've overdosed on melatonin is you have very vivid dreams or nightmares after taking melatonin. That's one of the key signs that you've taken way too much. Good news is it's not going to hurt you. It's just going to give you weird, funky dreams. It may make your system off a little bit, but it's important to know that if you got the weird dreams, you're probably taking too much. The other thing is the form of administration turns out to be important. So if you take it in a pill, you would take it 90 minutes before you would want to see an effect. Remember, so it's not like taking an Ambien where you take it right before bed, right? In a pill form of melatonin, it's 90 minutes. So it's an hour and a half before you're even thinking about sleeping. So you want to, now if you have it in a dropper, like in a tincture, like in a bottle like this, that you can do about 30 minutes before bed, only if you let it under your tongue and you leave it there for about a minute, minute and a half. Really let it soak in. That's really what you want to do there. And when would I recommend melatonin? Well, here's what I would tell you is, for many people, if you are having difficulty maintaining sleep for significant periods of time, and you feel as though if your body could just sleep in a different time zone, it would be better, that's when melatonin is really effective. But melatonin is really not effective for making people feel sleepy. If we were looking for an herb or a supplement that had some science behind it that would make people feel more sleepy, we'd probably be looking at something called magnolia bark or something called valerian root. Both of those have been studied because they help reduce anxiety before bed and allow the natural sleep process to take over. So I would recommend those in lieu of melatonin. So what I would say is if you're having a difficult time sleeping and you're trying to figure out a single ingredient supplement that you may want to take, number one, check your magnesium, your vitamin D, your iron first. Make sure those are all up to par. Second thing is, if you feel like you're sleeping in the wrong time zone, maybe melatonin could be appropriate for you. But if that's not your issue and it's just you can't fall asleep, then I would consider magnolia bark or valerian next. After that, head on over to my website. I've got lots and lots of information about each one of these ingredient profiles. Also, to be fair, Sleep Doctor PM kind of does it all for you if you need it.
Yeah, and there's one question about will that happen the same with melatonin and kids and nightmares?
So let's talk about kids and melatonin. So I am 100% against children taking melatonin. Remember, melatonin is a hormone. What's interesting about it, most people don't know, but in Europe, it's by prescription only.
Oh,
That's number one. Number two, at high dosages, it's used as a contraceptive.
oh, wow.
It's birth control. I can't think of anything worse for a young female developing body than to institute birth control when there's no necessary reason to do so. So I don't recommend melatonin in anyone under the age of 18, specifically in females. Now, that is a slightly controversial stance, and I'll tell you why. Because many doctors out there are telling parents, hey, just give your kids some melatonin. If they're having a hard time sleeping, it should help them. Here's why I don't like that. No child on earth should be taught that you need a pill to sleep.
Yeah.
Period. Period. Okay? Kids don't need that. And by the way, 99% of children have acres and acres of melatonin on board. So giving them more, all they're doing is peeing it out. And you're just teaching them that now they have a reliance on a pill to sleep, which is not what we ever want to have children doing. There is one group of children, however, that I do recommend melatonin in, and that's children on the autism spectrum disorder. There's significant data to show at fairly high dosages, we're talking 4, 5, 6, 8 milligrams, that those children do exceedingly well with melatonin. So if you have a child that's on the spectrum or you live with somebody that's on the spectrum, melatonin could be something that could be helpful for them, but generally speaking, I do not recommend melatonin in children.
Wonderful, wonderful. And you actually answered one of our questions, which was a lot of women were experiencing vivid dreams. So I think
Right.
there may be that correlation between their having melatonin.
Well, it could be melatonin, but I also wanted to break something down because a lot
Yeah.
of people say to me, Dr. Breus, I'm having night terrors. And then
Yes.
some people say to me, I'm having nightmares. And so what I thought I would do is define those two because they're actually different. Okay? So a nightmare is where you have a scary dream that wakes you up, right?
Right.
And so you're alerted out of your dream. A night terror is very different. My daughter had these, scared the crap out of us. That's where somebody sits up in the middle of the night, screams, stops screaming, and then goes back and falls asleep. When they wake up the next day, they have no recollection of having that event. When somebody with a nightmare wakes up the next day, they know exactly what happened. And that's how you tell the difference.
Gotcha.
Okay? So when somebody is sleep deprived, they can have all kinds of things. They can have nightmares, they can have night terrors, things like that.
Oh my God. Okay. Okay. That helps a lot. So you talked about the banana tea, but are there other things that we can incorporate in our diets to sleep better?
Absolutely. Well, so here's the thing to remember is when you sleep well, your body functions well. When you sleep poorly, your body gains weight, loses energy, does all the things that you don't want it to do. Remember, everyone, everything you do better with a good night's sleep. Literally everything. I mean, it affects every organ system and every disease state. So when we think about sleep and we think about things like weight gain, what does that relationship look like? It's unfortunately very connected. So what we see is when people become sleep deprived, remember that's a personal definition for all of you out there for yourselves,
Okay.
here's what happens to your body. 4 different things that are not so good. Number 1, our appetite increases. The reason this happens is because our brain says, why am I still awake? I better go find some food. I don't know if I'm going to have enough fuel to last me out. So our appetite increases. Also, our metabolism slows down. The reason our metabolism slows down is the same reason. Our body's saying, hold on to the resources as long as possible while I've increased your appetite to go find some more food. So we have high appetite and low metabolism when you're sleep deprived. That does not sound like a recipe for getting thinner, does it?
Right.
No. It gets worse, though. When hormones change a lot during this period of time, and something called leptin and ghrelin come into play. Ghrelin increases hunger, which, by the way, is different than appetite by about 20%. Leptin is a hormone that makes us feel full. We call it the hormone of satiety. That actually decreases by 15%. So we've got high appetite, high hunger, low feelings of fullness, and low metabolism when we're sleep deprived. But wait, it gets even worse.
Oh my God.
So what ends up happening is the reason that our appetite is high is because our cortisol level has elevated, because our brain doesn't know what's going on. Well, that cortisol has been humming around in our brain for a while, and our brain doesn't like it. The easiest way for our brain to reduce cortisol is to add something called serotonin, right? People may have heard of serotonin. It's the comfort hormone, right? That's why when we eat foods that increase serotonin, we call them comfort foods. Well,
Mm.
guess what? You start craving high fat, high calorie foods, and when you're sleep deprived. And so what are you looking for? You don't say, hey, I'm sleep deprived, I want a bag of carrots, right? You say, I want a Snickers, I want a muffin, I want a donut, something like that, and that adds the pounds even more. So unfortunately, sleep has a tremendous amount to do with what's going on with our weight. Now, one other question is, well, can food affect our sleep? Like, I know sleep can affect our weight, but can food affect our sleep as well, Michael? The answer is yes. So depending upon what you eat before bed, it can have a pretty dramatic effect on your sleep. One of the things I tell people all the time is, if you experience indigestion or you're trying new food or spicy food or things like that, try to have it a little bit earlier in the evening to see how your body is going to react. Because remember, your body is not going to react well sometimes to new spices, and that can cause indigestion, cause problems in the middle of the night, things like that. Obviously, anything with caffeine in it is not going to be so good for sleep. And then finally, anything with alcohol in it, or if you're drinking wine, we definitely know that that has a unfortunately poor effect on our sleep.
Wonderful. Is there like I've heard a lot, and someone I think was Beauty Sleep Secrets was talking about this, that stopping to eat anything 2 or 3 hours before bed helps with that process of getting to sleep better.
So it depends. It's interesting. So it actually depends on your chronotype. So for some people, especially lions or early birds, it's absolutely they need to stop eating very early, and that certainly helps with their sleep. But I'm a night owl. I'm a wolf. I'm eating until 9:30, 10 o'clock almost every night. So the question becomes, when do you need to stop, and what are you eating, right? And so if you're going to have a big pasta, if you're going to have chicken parm, yeah, that's not a great idea at 10 o'clock at night, right? So what I tell people all the time is have your largest meal hopefully over by about 6, 7 o'clock at night. Then, if you're still hungry before bed, you can have a small 250 calorie snack. It needs to be about 70% carbohydrates and about 30% either protein or fat. So a good thing would be like an apple with some nut butter, right? Or a rice cake with some avocado or something like that. That will satiate you but won't put on too many calories. And it should be around 250 calories. But the thing is the carbohydrates actually help, because remember, carbohydrates help you fall asleep because of the emission of serotonin. So having that little snack could actually be a lifesaver.
Interesting, interesting. The other thing that we were very excited to see in your recommendations is this idea about doing yoga or Tai Chi. Can you talk about how that impacts like your sleep quality?
Absolutely. So first of all, remember something is sleep is recovery. If you don't do anything to recover from, you're not going to get great sleep. So having some form of movement becomes very, very important. Now, to be clear, you don't have to run a marathon, right? You can do yoga, you can do Tai Chi. There's actually been studies to show that both of those are helpful for people when they sleep. But what's interesting about it is it appears as though it's the stress reduction from doing those things that appears to have the biggest effect. So as an example, if you're going to be doing yoga, I don't have a problem if you want to do yoga, for example, in the evenings, even before bed. However, you want to avoid inversions where your head is below your heart, because that can actually cause a heart rate to stimulate and kind of go faster. And remember, we want slower heart rate, not faster heart rate. Um,
Yeah.
so that's certainly one thing that you would want to avoid as well.
Gotcha. One thing that just came out as a question that I think is great is mood, and mood changes is a big also conversation during this stage. How does that impact or vice versa sleep quality? Are there certain things to avoid, or how can
Well,
we?
here's what I can tell you is when you don't have good sleep quality, you are not in a good mood. I can assure you of that. And so here's what happens. My daughter says it best. She says when people are sleep deprived, they're grumpy fish, right? I think that's the best term ever,
Is
right?
that a
It's like
different
it
chronotype?
it should be. That's a good idea. Um, right. So, here's what happens is sleep has a definite effect on our mental health. We know that it increases anxiety. We know it makes depression worse. We know we have a greater likelihood of teeing off on somebody or getting very upset with them out of nowhere. And what's interesting is the more sleep deprived you are, the more you react negatively to negative news. You don't actually act more positively to positive news, which is unfortunate. So you really do want to know and understand that your sleep is definitely going to affect your mood. And if you don't believe me, just ask your bed partner or one of your family members, because they will be happy to tell you that when you are tired, you are not fun to be around.
Yeah, and you speak a lot as well with like sleep hygiene. So one of our friends was asking, are there things that I should change in my bedroom to help, to be more conducive to that quality of sleep?
Absolutely. So, especially with menopause, there's a lot of stuff that can go cuckoo in the bedroom, right? So, the way I think about the bedroom is I think of the five senses, and I try to do something for each one of the five senses. So, sight, sound, touch, taste, and smell, right? So, sight is light. We know that light disrupts sleep more than any other thing, even heat, believe it or not. So, we want a dark bedroom. Now, to be clear, you do not have to put electrical tape on your little devices everywhere where there's a tiny blue light. That's complete BS, okay?
Mhm.
And by the way, my wife falls asleep with the television on every single night. Big screen TV on in our bedroom every single night, okay?
Uh-huh.
So what you have to do is know what your sensitivities are. So what do? I wear an eye mask and I have earplugs. And so my wife can watch television because that's how she's able to fall asleep. Now, many people out there are going to be like, what? The sleep doctor is saying it's okay to fall asleep with the TV on? Here's what I'm saying. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is if you need something to distract yourself because you can't turn off your brain and TV does that for you, then just go into the software, turn on the TV timer so that it clicks off after 60 or 90 minutes and call it a day,
Yeah.
right? Like, I don't have a problem with that. I'd certainly rather you watch television to fall asleep than take a sleeping pill, right? So, I mean, at the end of the day, the environment has something to do with it and light is important, but there are pros and cons in either direction. Sound is another big one. I like to wear earplugs. I actually wear ones from Bose that are called Sleep Buds.
Mhm.
These are interesting because they have music in them and you can wear them all night long. They're designed to be worn all night long, and they have a very specific music library that's very interesting to work with there, specific for sleep. Or if you don't want to spend a bunch of dough on Bose, just go to the drugstore and buy some foam earplugs. You want to get them noise level rated at 32 or below. This way you can always hear the smoke alarm. That's kind of the number that you want to be looking for earplugs. Eye shades, earplugs, keep it dark, two important things for sight and sound. The next big one is touch. So touch is your mattress, your sheets, your blanket, and your temperature, okay?
Mhm.
Now, we've had a little bit of discussion about temperature, but remember, when we're falling asleep, here's what's happening is our core body temperature rises, rises, rises. At about 10:30, it hits a peak, and then it begins to drop. That drop is a signal to our brain to release melatonin. So when we're getting cooler, our brain releases melatonin, which is the key that starts the engine for sleep, and then sleep occurs. If your body isn't cool, it's not going to release the melatonin. Well, if you have a hot flash right in the middle of trying to fall asleep, your body certainly isn't too cool. So think about, what are you wearing? Are you wearing, for example, moisture wicking clothing, right? So there are moisture wicking pajamas, moisture wicking sheets out there that are extremely good, very, very effective. We also know that having a lighter cotton sheet is going to be significantly better than having a polyester sheet because of the ability for heat to move and transfer through that type of material. Also, people need to make sure that they're removing their old winter and fall blankets and putting on spring and summer blankets because there's a difference in what's going on. Obviously, you want to keep your temperature as cool as you can. The general recommendation is somewhere between 65 and 70 degrees if it's at all possible to pull that off. That's kind of where you want to be. As far as mattresses and pillows are concerned, that's important as well. Those can trap heat. I've recently really gotten to enjoy Purple. The
Mm-hmm.
Purple mattress and the Purple pillow are excellent. I have them both here at the house. And full disclosure, I just started working with Purple as their chief sleep advisor.
Uh-huh.
And so it's been awesome. Their products are amazing. We've had such great fun, and I've been putting my patients on them, and they really like it. So it's been quite interesting to think about that. Sound is another one. Oh no, we talked about sound. Smell. Smell is another one that's important to think about. And aromatherapy really does work. But to
Mm-hmm.
be clear, you don't just sniff something and pass out, right? Unless it's ether, right? Or something along those lines. But when you smell something, aromatherapy in particular, it causes a muscular relaxation response. And that allows you to then relax and have the natural sleep process take over. There's only two aromas that I've seen any data on. One is lavender and the other is ylang ylang.
Mm-hmm.
Then the final one is taste, and we already talked about snacks and things like that, so I think we already covered that one.
Great. No, that's a lot of great advice. Someone was like, for some people, like taking a shower before bed is better. Is that something where, again, is know thyself of what works?
So, so here's what I tell people all the time. So it depends upon when you take your shower before bed. So there's some data to show that people who have insomnia, if they take a hot bath and raise their core body temperature about 90 minutes before bed, when they get out of the bath, then their core body temperature falls and our brain gets fooled into turning on the melatonin. So for insomniacs out there, a hot bath 90 minutes before bed, there's real data to say that's a great idea. But let's say you're not an insomniac, but you want to have a good night's sleep, you want to have some good quality sleep. If you like to take your bath or shower in the evening, I recommend a cool one. Not a hot, not even a warm, but a slightly cool one. Again, we want our core body temperature to start cooling down before we get into bed. And I would say have a cool bath maybe 30 minutes before bed. Not cold, and we're not talking ice bath or anything cuckoo like that. Just a lukewarm to cool water, just to allow your body to start to cool down a little bit more.
Great, great. The other thing that I found really interesting is this idea of cognitive behavioral therapy. And sorry, I kind of like made a hash turn in there, but
Uh-huh.
um, I was really interested because there's been a lot of benefits, even related to symptoms of hot flashes and,
Right.
of course, depression and some of those more logical. But tell us a little bit more about this special CBT that is targeted to sleep disruption.
So here's what's interesting about cognitive behavioral therapy is arguably the largest cause of sleeplessness is anxiety, right? You get in bed and you can't turn off your brain, right? It's happened to me. I'm sure it's happened to you, right? It's happened to all of us a bunch of
Yep.
times, right? That's the thing that really drives it. And so cognitive behavioral therapy specifically addresses that. So what it does is it works on your behavior first. And how it does that is actually restricts sleep so that you're only in bed for 6 or 7 hours. You can't do this by yourself. You need to have a doctor help you do this. Otherwise, it could be dangerous. But you get that part down and you have a locked and loaded sleep schedule. So that it takes care of the behavior or the body. The next part is the cognitive part. This is where we really see kind of the rubber meets the road, especially in menopause, is because what we do is we take ideas that people have about sleep that aren't true, and we prove to them that they're not true. So as an example, many people have these things called cognitive distortions. So
Mm-hmm.
a very popular one is if I don't get 8 hours of sleep, I'm going to lose years off the back end of my life. That's a very, very popular thought amongst people out there. There is no truth to that whatsoever. So
Mm-hmm.
what I'll do is there's a list of about 20 very well-known distortions. So we feed them to our patients. We say, hey, is this something that you think about? Rate it from 1 to 10. And then we start to identify what their distortions are. Then we can prove to them that their distortions aren't real, right? Because most people do what we call catastrophizing. So they say, I've got this problem that's this big, and then they turn it into a problem that's that big, right? And when it's sleep, that's a problem. So really cognitive behavioral therapy focuses in on not just the behaviors and not just the thoughts, but both together to give you a combined approach.
That's awesome. And are there things that if we're looking for a therapist to help us through that we should look for?
Absolutely. So if you're looking for a sleep coach, I actually wrote a blog on sleep coaching. And there are 7 or 8 different things that you want to think about. But the biggest one, if you're going to work with a therapist or a sleep coach, is make sure that they're actually trained. Many people are selling themselves as sleep coaches these days, more with pediatrics and like baby whisperer type of stuff. But there are a couple of people out there who are not certified in anything, read a couple of books, and now call themselves a sleep coach. So you do have to be aware. And so I would suggest if you're interested, go check out that article at thesleepdoctor.com in my blogs. Just type in the search bar sleep coaching. It'll pop right up and you'll be able to learn a whole lot.
Wonderful, wonderful. And I think that someone was asking in here around anxiety, and a lot of women during perimenopause and menopause, because of depression and anxiety, get prescribed antidepressants and those affect sleep. So what would be your perspective? Because there you have, you're a woman, you're going to a professional, and then you end up being prescribed a antidepressant that is going to disrupt your sleep.
So here's the thing that's interesting about antidepressants is in many cases, it's the timing of administration that has the largest effect on sleep. And so sometimes you have to play around with it. As an example, if you take Wellbutrin, that's super stimulating. You would never want to have somebody take that at night. You would have them take it in the morning. But maybe Effexor, which is very sedating, you might have somebody take at night. So it's really going to depend upon the medication and then the timing of that medication. To be clear, if you have suicidal ideation, if you have major depression, if you are on an SSRI or a depression or anxiety medication, stay on your medication. Okay, that is a conversation that you should have with your doctor. Never discontinue medication for saying, oh, I'm just tired of being on this stuff. Boom. It's really very hazardous to do that. Your body has a lot of reactive effects. You have to taper people off of medications in order for them to remove them safely. Also, I would argue that depression in and of itself is very detrimental to sleep. So I'd rather see people on those medications to help with the depression, which will eventually help with their sleep. Now, we do have some instances, unfortunately, with like major depression, where the medications have to be used are so strong that they actually negatively affect sleep. In those cases, some doctors will put that person on a sleeping pill or a sleeping tablet. In other cases, we'll use cognitive behavioral therapy. That way we can continue to use the medication that's effective, but hopefully be able to address some of those sleep issues.
Wonderful, wonderful. So when do you think a woman, like, again, 80% of us suffer through sleep disruption. What is the point when we say, I need a specialist versus I have all these tools,
Right. So here's what I would tell you is if you're having a problem sleeping more than 3 nights a week, for more than 3 weeks a month, for more than 3 months, so the rule of threes, you need to talk to a doctor for sure.
Gotcha. Well,
sleep specialist.
That is a great advice. I love the numbers because it's like really clear, really clear.
Well, you know me, I'm very prescriptive.
Yes. No, we love that. Thank you. And then, besides then, for, maybe that's not our case, what maybe apps or CDs or any other maybe tech or, there's things like Headspace and Calm out there. What type of other tools?
So let's talk about that. Sure. So at the end of the day, there are some apps that can be helpful for sleep. Calm was not created to help you with sleep. Headspace was not created to help you with sleep. Those are both meditation apps. And so remember, meditation doesn't make you sleepy. Meditation brings you present. That is the object of meditation. If you fall asleep while meditating, there are some sleep meditations to be clear, but if you fall asleep while meditating, that means you're sleep deprived. You need to get some more sleep before you start meditating again. Okay. But there are some very useful programs out there. One is called Muse, M-U-S-E. It's actually a headband that will measure your brain waves while you're sleeping. Very, very effective. There is also one called Somtrist. This is actually an FDA approved online insomnia treatment. Your doctor or a psychologist would know about it. Also, if you went to, for example, the National Sleep Foundation website, they have information there for people. But my favorite place to find a sleep doctor is if you go to www.sleepcenters.org. You can put in your zip code and it'll tell you about a sleep lab that's next to your home. And they all have people like me associated with them, so you can call and say, hey, I want to get an appointment with your sleep psychologist or whatever.
Oh, wonderful. That's super, super helpful. And you spoke a lot about tech. So we love the fact that so much of the technology or innovations are trying to address this issue. Is there something that you are excited about in the horizon that will help us get better sleep?
I think so. I'm actually starting to work now. I'm
Yeah,
starting to
I'm
work
back.
now. It's all good. On projects with cannabis. I'm starting to try to understand how can we use cannabis safely and effectively to help people with sleep. And so right now we know that CBD, which isn't something we've talked about yet, can be helpful with pain and can be helpful with anxiety. But let me be clear in that the only study that I have seen where CBD was effective for sleep required you to use 180 milligrams of CBD. So that's like a whole bottle, right?
Oh, wow.
Right. So to be clear, you don't just put a few drops of CBD under your tongue and fall asleep. Now, what it could do is it could lower your pain and it could lower your anxiety, and then the natural sleep process could take over. So there's some utility to having CBD if you have pain or if you have anxiety. But if you don't have either one of those, CBD is probably not for you. I personally think that THC, the molecule that actually makes us feel high, is actually helpful for sleep only if you don't have too much. So if you have a very, very low dose of THC, what it does is it makes your body relaxed and you start to get, that natural sleep process can take back over. But you have to be careful because when you do take, for example, a marijuana product that has THC in it, we know that marijuana actually increases heart rate. So remember from the very beginning, we
Right.
want that heart rate to go down. So sometimes a little bit of THC might be helpful. I'm starting to run studies on that and learn more about that. So stay tuned. I'll be back in probably 6 months to a year and be able to tell you more about that project.
Wow, that seems very exciting. And to your point, there's a lot of like pixie dust and out there. So
There is.
um, I think it's great that there are people like you doing quantitative like scientific studies to really have the right product and the right
Yeah,
combination. That's great.
that's the goal. That's the
Are
goal.
wonderful. So I think that we are right bumping at the end
We are. I do have to hop.
of this hour. I appreciate so much you being so generous with your time and answering our questions. I think
My
that
pleasure.
there were a lot of questions and a lot of interaction in the comments. So thank you everyone for being so participative. I know that sleep is such a huge issue for all of us. And like I said before, we are grateful to count Dr. Breus as a friend of Menosplane. So please check us out,
Absolutely.
menosplane.com, and do check the Sleep Doctor website because it's a source, a wealth of information on sleep hacks and advice and great information. And
Oh, and
so
one more thing. I have a new book coming out in December called Energize. So I'll be back before then to talk with you guys about that. But I got to run now. But thank you guys so much. I had so much fun talking today and answering questions. Michael Breus, the sleep doctor, wishing all of you sweet dreams. Take care.
thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Bruce. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for sticking with us all this hour. First live, my phone just fell once. So that's great. And looking forward to the next one. Please subscribe and like us. And hopefully this is the beginning of much better sleep for all of us. I definitely feel better of not feeling guilty every time I only have 6 hours of sleep. So thank you again, everyone. And do please reach out with further questions and we can go deeper in any topic on this that you want. So thank you again. Thank you for being here and supporting and, share with friends. Thank you.